Hello people! Do you know why the great quartet is called Metallica? Do you know who is the true pillar of the band Metallica? We're gonna talk about these and other curiosities later on this video. My name is Gabe from TEBE Studio UK. TEBE Studio UK. Everybody knows that Metallica as a band formed in the 80s. But to understand the true story of Metallica, we have to go back in the 70s, precisely in 1973. Torben Ulrich, a famous Danish tennis player, back at the time was playing at the Italian Open in Rome, Italy. The fate wanted that at the same period of time, a friend of Torben was playing in a nightclub. We are talking about the saxophone player Dexter Gordon. Torben, his wife, along with their 10 years old kid Lars, went all together in a club to see him playing. And something happened. Dexter Gordon was on stage playing his saxophone when all of a sudden a little 10 years old kid, Lars indeed, jumped on stage and started to sing at the microphone and running back and forth on the stage for like several minutes. Torben Ulrich was amazed by the courage shown by his 10 years old kid Lars and understood that the sparkle light up on him. After that, Lars and Dexter became really close friends. Actually, Dexter Gordon was the godfather of Lars. Dexter brought the little Lars to his first rock concert and they went together to see Deep Purple, and Lars' mind completely blew up. Miles away from Copenhagen, where a little Lars Ulrich was doing his own discoveries in the rock music scene, in the United States, few other teenagers were doing, let's say, the same discoveries of the new wave of British heavy metal, also called, just to name some of them, we're talking about Dave Mustaine, Kirk Hammett, Ron McGovney, Jason Newsted, Cliff Barton, and last but not least, James Hetfield. Coming back to Europe, the Ulrich family, for several reasons, and there is one in particular we're gonna talk about later, decided to move to Newport Beach, a city not that far from Los Angeles. One of the reasons Ulrich family moved to US was to pursue the tennis career of their children Lars. But remember the first gig? Lars was obsessed by rock music, and instead of choosing the sport path, he decided that he wanted to be a musician, and he really focused on that. We must admit that back at the time, we're talking about the 70s, his parents were very open-minded people, so they decided to give Lars an opportunity, and in 1977 they bought to Lars his first drum kit, a white drum kit, where he started to bang his drumsticks on Deep Purple and Kiss tune. Meanwhile, Lars was taking his first steps on drums. James Hetfield and Ron McGovney were trying to form a band in a Los Angeles neighborhood in Ron's garage. They started to do audition with drummers, and one of that drummer was indeed Lars Ulrich. The audition with Lars was a complete disaster. James later said that his drumming was literally his drum kit got only one cymbal that will keep falling down, so Lars had to stop several times to put it back in place. He also said that Lars was smelling a lot, smelling like Denmark. So of course, James and Ron decided to move on and looking for someone else. Lars Ulrich was again on his own, and in summer 1981 decided to come back to Europe following the tour of his favorite band, Diamond Head. Back at the time, Diamond Head were leaders of the new wave British of heavy metal, and they've been a great influence for Lars. Coming back from England, Lars Ulrich was completely obsessed by the new wave British of heavy metal, but he wanted to make something with his own. By the time, he was not the only one person obsessed with the new wave British of heavy metal. So once back in the US, he started to meet people and create, let's say, a roster of contacts around him. He basically knew everybody that was into the heavy metal scene. In particular, one of his friends, Brian Slagel, noticed that something was going on in the heavy metal scene, and he made his own fanzine called New Heavy Metal Review, apart from working for Odds Records, a music shop that was actually selling records, so he kinda had the market under control. Apart from the fanzine, Brian Slagel decided to create his own record label that he called Metal Blade, and in order to give a push to his fanzine, he decided to make a compilation of underground bands in the heavy metal scene. The New Heavy Metal Review presents Metal Massacre. Brian Slagel basically just told Lars Ulrich that he wanted to do this kind of compilation, and Lars wanted to be there. Lars didn't have any band at the time, so what did Lars do? He called back James Hetfield and Ron McGovney, explaining to them the situation, that it was actually looking for a band to be part of this compilation. So James Hetfield decided to give a second chance to Lars, and they organized a rehearsal together. James Hetfield actually was surprised by the new skills developed by the young Lars Ulrich, and he also had a new drum kit. From that moment, things got serious. They had to write down the song for the compilation, and plus they had to record it. But Lars Ulrich wasn't really happy about the power trio idea, and the trio, Lars Ulrich at the drums, Ron McGovney at the bass guitar, and James Hetfield at vocals and guitar, started to look for a second guitarist, more precisely a solo guitarist, to have even a bigger sound, emulating the European heavy metal bands. They put an advertisement on Recycler, and the first one who responded was a certain Lloyd Grant. But James and Lars were not really happy about this guitarist, so they decided to put again the advertisement on Recycler, and a young Dave Mustaine answered the call and amazed the trio on the first audition. Dave Mustaine was on. So the lineup was complete, they need to record the album and of course give a name to the band. There are stories about Lars and James that gave the name of the band after a book titled Encyclopedia Metallica. It was basically a hard rock guide written by Brian Harrigan and Malcolm Dawn. But what probably happened, that a friend of Lars wanted to give a name to his own fanzine, and he asked Lars if it was better to call the fanzine Metal Mania or Metallica, and Lars, without thinking that much, suggested the first for the fanzine and kept Metallica for his own. The song that they decided to put on the compilation was called Hit the Lights, and it was already written by James Hetfield. It was actually recorded with a very cheap gear. On this version of Hit the Lights, Lars Ulrich and James basically recorded everything: drums, guitar, bass and vocals. But the solos are recorded by the talented Dave Mustaine. But only the first solo was written by Dave Mustaine. The second solo on Hit the Lights, on that version of Hit the Lights, was written by Lloyd Grant. Hit the Lights was recorded on cassette and it wasn't good enough to go on the album. It has to be remastered, and that will cost the band $50 that they didn't have at all. It was the friend of Lars, John Cornarens, that borrowed the $50 to the band to give them the chance to go on Metal Massacre. But the band didn't forget about the $50 borrowed by John, and they thanked John $50 Cornarens on the back of the record. Here there is a curiosity. On the first release of Metal Massacre, the band name Metallica was written in a wrong way. It was actually written Mettallica. But due to the success of the compilation, they had the possibility to do another release, a second release, and they actually fixed the name from Metallica to Metallica. So these were the early stage of Metallica. We can actually say that Lars Ulrich and $50 by John made the history of Metallica. So you, yes, you, next time you talk badly about Lars Ulrich, think twice, because no Lars, no Metallica, no metal party. So, did you know any of that? If you want to know what happened next, just comment below that you wanna hear the rest of the story, and I will be more than happy to tell you about the Metallica history. So, thank you very much people for watching the video. A very special thanks to Lucio and Dominix. Thank you very much to be my patrons and support my channel. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash a like, comment down below, subscribe to my channel, and see you the next Wednesday for a new video. Cheers! Game! Where he started to bang his drum... Where he started to bang his drumsticks on his... When he started to bang his drumstick on his... Where he started to bang his drumstick... TEBE Studio UK.